Okay, Jim Feist and Victor King. We're going to talk some NFL football. I think Victor has something he wants to say about a college play as well. And Victor and I were just talking off air, and we're talking about second year quarterbacks. Victor, why don't you fill the folks in on what we were just speaking of? Because I think it's very pertinent.
Right, since it's fresh in our minds, we were just talking about last night's Green Bay Washington game. Another outstanding effort by the Packers. It looks like that defense is for real. That is for sure.
Sure
I mean,
is.
I mean, Micah Parsons hasn't even played significantly for them, and they've already put up amazing numbers against both Detroit and Washington yesterday. But we were talking about the fact that Jaden Daniels, the guy who had the fantastic rookie season for Washington last year, really struggled last night. And he didn't look spectacular in his first game either, that win over the New York Giants. So, what you and I were talking about was the fact that it appears that the second year quarterbacks who had a great rookie season, it's going to take them still a little bit of time to really develop. The Drake Mays of the world, the Jaden Daniels, the Bo Nix, these are all guys who had great rookie seasons who struggled last week in their first game of their sophomore season. So it takes more than just one great rookie season to determine if a guy is going to be a great NFL quarterback, apparently. So there could very well, Jim, be some growing pains for these second year quarterbacks.
Well, one thing that we can always point out that the defensive coordinators have now gotten a lot of film on these guys. And they had the whole off season to go back and say, well, okay, we're going to play this guy the first week, the second week, whatever week. What do we see here and how do we stop them? And what, they got away with a lot last year because we didn't know them and then they kind of snuck up on us. Now what to so and that's what I think we're seeing some of that.
Yeah, we definitely are, Jim. And it kind of takes us into our very, very first topic, the fact that these rookie quarterbacks struggled so much last week in week one, contributed to the overall very low scoring weekend in the NFL. We may as well not bury the lead when it comes to reviewing last week in the NFL. 12 games went under the total out of 16, only four ended up going over. That's 75% of all games under the total, only 41.3 combined points per game last week, one of the lowest scoring week ones we've seen over the last 10 years. Now, looking inside that number, there's some interesting stuff here. Again, we just mentioned week one, 4 overs, 12 unders. Take a look at last week's primetime games, the night games. They ended up going 3-1 to the over, actually. 75% of the four nighttime games went over the total. Let's work our way backwards. The Monday night game between the Bears Vikings, 51 points over the total. Sunday night game, a game for the ages, 41-40 shootout between Baltimore and Buffalo. That game well over the total. Baltimore set a record for most explosive plays in a game. In fact, an explosive play is regarded as a rushing play of 10 or more yards and a pass of 20 or more yards. Baltimore had explosive plays on 32.7% of their plays last week. That means 1 out of every 3 Ravens play on offense was either a 10-yard or better run or a 20-yard or better pass. Unbelievable amount of explosive plays in that game. And again, well over the total. So did the Friday night game, the division game between the Chiefs and the Chargers, ended up going over the total in a game in which it appeared the steam was on the right side. We talked about it a little bit last week. It opened at 45.5, closed at 47.5. They squeaked in at 48 points. The game ended up going over by a half. And then finally, remember that first game of the season, the Thursday night game we talked about, the Cowboys, 41 points in the first half of their game, and it still ended up going under with that ugly 3-point second half. So my point is this. The primetime games went 3-1 to the over. That means the Sunday daytime games 1 over, 11 unders. Every game played under the sun on Sunday went under the total except one. 1 over, 11 unders. And of course, the irony, Jim, is the fact that that one game that did go over was the game in which so many of us and
Oh, yes.
a lot of the Steams and a lot
Oh,
of the Sharps and a lot of the Whales were on the Steelers Jets under the total, and
which
that
was the
ended up
lowest.
being
That was the lowest total on the board.
the lowest total of the entire week. You're absolutely right, and they combined for what 60 plus points. So I mean, go figure. The game with the lowest total is the only over in the complete Sunday action. So that's kind of working our way inside that 4 and 12 number. Interesting. Day games 1 and 11 over under. Night games 3 and 1 to the over. Now again, last night's game ended up going under the total by a couple of points. So we'll see if that continues or not. But again, a very low scoring first week in the NFL season. As I mentioned, 41.3 combined points per game. If we eliminate that 81 point game between the Ravens and the Bills, then the average score was only 36.7. And man, oh man, you're talking numbers from like the 1990s when you're talking an NFL average weekend has 37 combined points per game. So we're really blasting into the past when you get
Wow.
a week in the NFL
I
in
didn't
which there's
realize it was. I didn't realize it was that low. That's incredible. And yet, almost
36.7.
70 points in the Jet game.
Right. Factoring that Jet game, the game still went 36.7 if you remove the Baltimore Buffalo shootout.
Wow.
We'll see what happens, Jim, here in week 2. I'll say this. Last season, week 2 was a very low scoring week. There were 5 overs, 11 unders. The average was only 39.6 again last year. Don't just use that as your guide because this has been a very actual volatile week of the season when it comes to over-unders. I mean, look at this. Just going back the last 4 years, here are the NFL OU results in week 2. Last year, 5 and 11. 2 years ago, 2023, there was 13 overs, 3 unders.
Oh, really?
Prior to that, in 2022, it was 5, 10, and 1. And then finally, back in 2021, it was 11 and 5. So we've been flip-flopping between significant, drastic over results one year, under results the next. Over the results one year, under the next. Again, who knows what's going to happen this week? It's been one of the more volatile weeks of the season when it comes to over-unders and predicting them ahead of time,
Wow. Now, how do we overall avoid what they always say, overreaction Monday? Well, this is Friday. So now we're overreaction Friday to week 1. How do you avoid that? We know all of these teams are going to go back and practice and realize what they did right or wrong, try to improve, try to change play. A lot of the kickers were a mess last week. How do you avoid that? How do you predict? Because we don't have that much database working for us at the moment to say, this is what Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati had 9 yards in the second half, for God's sake, and that's an explosive offense. I mean, Cleveland should have beat Cincinnati. They missed an extra point and a field goal that should have been made. Atlanta, well, that game could have gone over if the guy would have hit the field goal and send it into overtime, which he did not do.
Right.
How do you avoid not overreacting?
Well, we never knee jerk off the previous week. No sharp gambler does, and you don't want to fall into that trap. That's for sure. So, I bet a few more overs and unders last week and didn't have a winning week in the NFL. Thankfully, we did enough okay on Saturday in college football that we kind of balanced those things out. So again, my first thing would be, if you like a game or two over the total again this weekend, don't be afraid to fire out with it. Don't be influenced by last week's results. That's number one. Number two is take a look at the over-under lines. I don't know about you, Jim, but back in the summer, there were publications out there that had lines that were posted for this entire 2025 NFL season ahead of time, and that's point spreads and even over underlines. So what I also do is I take a look at this week's over underlines. I take a look at what the summer over underline was potentially in that particular game, and I see if there's any sort of perceived value. I'm going to use one game as a comparison here. On this schedule here, the Detroit Lions hosting the Chicago Bears this week, playing indoors in Detroit. Well, the summer over underline in that game was 48.5 to 49 points. Based on what just happened last week, it's down to 46.5. There's now value on that game over the total based on these summer lines and based on the fact that we don't want to overreact from what happened last week. So that's one of the things I do, Jim, is I take a look at some of those publications that had the OU lines posted for the entire season. I compare them to this week's over-under lines to see if there's anything in terms of value there. And again, just using that game as an example, there is about 2 to 2.5 points of value on Detroit and Chicago to go over the total. Whether or not we actually bet it or not, we'll see.
Well,
But
right.
do
Let's
the comparisons.
Let's look at that for a second. I mean, they obviously to publish something like that before the season, they're going off last year's statistics.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Detroit lost their all-star center. They lost their defensive end coordinator and the offensive coordinator. So the defensive coordinator was actually pretty good, and the offensive coordinator was awesome because they were a very high-scoring team. Now, then Caleb Williams on the other side, now they have the offensive coordinator from Detroit from the previous year. I mean, all those adjustments were not in the statistics last year based on where those people are now. So how do you go by that? How do you make those adjustments?
Right. They have to add up to something. Those adjustments have to mean something. And in Detroit's case, they did in week one, as this is the worst their offense has looked
bad
in years. Now, I'll say this as well. This week's over-underline against Chicago, this is the lowest Detroit home over-underline we've seen in their last 22 games now. The last time they had a line this low was late in the 23 season, in which they had an over-underline of 45.5 points. So, again, this has been one of the better home over dome stadiums in the NFL. I still think there's a little bit of value, but you are absolutely right in we have to account for some of those big off-season moves in some way. And in this particular case, that is probably one of the reasons that the line in this game is the lowest we've seen for a Detroit home game in a couple of years.
It's probably, in some cases, probably the lowest lines across the board when almost every game last week went under.
Right.
So
right.
They're going to make that adjustment, period.
Right. Definitely some value. Let me see here. When I put out the newsletter a couple of days ago, the average over-under line was at 44.1. I believe it's gone down slightly. We're right around 43.9 right now is the average over-under line, again, for this particular week. So, again, we'll see what happens here in NFL Week 2. But maybe that should take us into what we're going to use for our free play from the Totals Tip Sheet newsletter. If I can, Jim, the one guy in our newsletter who did have a winning week was our old friend Tuco.
Oh, good.
Tuco's team total. And we're going to go to a team total for our free play of the week. Now, don't forget, in the Totals Tip Sheet newsletter, page 2 here has got 3 best bets in it. We have an additional 2 best bets. So each week's issue does have 5 over-under best bets. You don't want to miss it. It's available at playbooksports.com. That's this week's Totals Tip Sheet newsletter. as is our huge playbook newsletter. That just came out Wednesday afternoon. Mark, myself, the guys here in the office working very, very hard. It's an 18-page newsletter. You don't want to miss it. It's required reading for any college football or NFL bettor. That's for sure. There's 7 best bets in every issue. It is only $12. And again, it's available at our website. You don't want to miss it at playbooksports.com. With that said, Jim, let me head into Tuco's area of expertise. And he's not going to play a full game total. He's going to play a team total, and he is going to go to a pissed off Blackbirds team. And in this case, we are talking about the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, they're huge favorites against Cleveland, right around 12 and a half points.
It's a big number.
Yet the over-under line is still fairly low at about 45 points in that game, right, Jim?
45 or 45 and a half. That's all I'm seeing right now. Yeah.
Okay, so now that means the implied score for the game is Baltimore to score about 28.5 and Cleveland to score about 16.5. That's the implied score in the game. And while we're going to lay off the Cleveland side of things in terms of how many points they'll score, we'll say this. Joe Flacco returning to Baltimore. Again, the Cleveland offense, despite the fact that they didn't put up points on the board last week against Cincinnati, only 16, they had the much better offense than the Bengals did last week.
They did, yeah.
That is for sure. But anyway, we're talking about the other team. We're talking about a pissed off Baltimore Raven team, and we're going to be playing them to go over their team total of 28 and a half points against Cleveland, hosting the Browns. Ravens are going to go 0-2 in the season. I don't think so. That was an inexplicable loss last week. What was that? 99.3% chance of winning with 5 minutes to go in the game. That's what they gave up against Buffalo in that game. So I'm sure that they're a very, very angry team, Baltimore, this week. They're looking for what you would call a whipping boy opponent. and they'll get one in week 2 here. So this is Tuco's lead play. It's a 2-star play. It's on the Ravens to score over 28 and a half. And for the Ravens, consistency is the key here. You know, the Ravens were one of only 3 teams in the NFL last year to average more than 30 points a game. The other 2 being Detroit and Buffalo. So we got that going for us. Even better, their numbers at home better than their road numbers. 31.1 points per game in 2024 at home, 30.1 points per game in 2023 in their home games. In actual team totals, Baltimore is the number 1 team in the entire league over that 2-year period. They went 12-5 over under in their team totals last year. They've gone 23-11 to the over in the last 2 seasons. They scored 31 against Cleveland at home in 2023. They scored 35 against Cleveland at home last year. And as double-digit favorites, like they are in this game, the Ravens have averaged, what do we got here, 31.6 points per game, dating back 4 seasons now. When laying double digits, they score a lot of points. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. And, of course, on the flip side, you got the fact that, you know, Cleveland's defensive numbers have been like night and day when you compare their home and their road games.
Yes.
On the lakefront, they play fantastic defense. Look what they did last week. They held Cincinnati to less than 160 total yards.
9 yards in the second half.
Only 17 points in the game. At home, the Browns have allowed only 18.6 points per game in the last 2 years. But on the road, the average is almost 2 touchdowns higher. They've averaged 30.1 points per game on the road in the last 2 seasons. You can see where we're going here. The clincher, NFL teams who scored 40 or more points on the road in their last game, like Baltimore just did last Sunday night, have averaged 30.2 points per game in their next game over the last 2 seasons. It's one of my favorite plays on the board in regards to team totals. Tuco's picking up the ball and running with it. So for our free play in terms of the totals tip sheet, we're going to use that Baltimore Ravens to score over 28.5 against Cleveland as they look for a big time win. The full game itself, Jim, still might go over. Cleveland might get that 17 points or more. Who knows? But what we'll play is Baltimore to score over 28.5.
I like it. Very good.
Good deal.
You had something you wanted to talk about in college as well.
Yeah, I may as well. I know we're only 1 week into the NFL season, but we've done better with our college totals than we have in the NFL right now. We're now 4-1 in the season in college football with our totals. I don't think we'll keep an 80% for the year, but it's a nice start, 4-1. That included a nice 2-0 Saturday last week as we went down to the Low Star State and we had over the total in the, let me see here. This was 3-star play over the total, SMU versus Baylor. If you watched that game last Saturday, very exciting. It went over the total in regulation play. They went into double overtime. The final score was 48-45,
Wow.
93 points. It was the highest scoring game in all of college football. And yeah, we were on the over in that one. Nice win. Then we had an afternoon game, also in the state of Texas, in which we went over the total. Texas San Antonio against Texas State. Final score in that one, another shootout, 43-36, 79 points. Love these overs in college football. As you know, if the game goes into overtime, that's where college unders go to die is overtime. Because you're not going to win an under when that game goes into overtime. That is for sure. But anyway, this week we're going to stay in the state of Texas. And one of my 3 plays for tomorrow is, in fact, an over in the Lone Star State. And you may not see it. Let me explain it if I can. Texas Longhorns at home playing a non-conference game, and they are playing UTEP. Texas El Paso Miners are visiting Texas, and this is a whacked game in terms of the point spread. It's a whacked game in terms of the over-under. The last time I looked, Texas was a 40-point favorite. There's even some 40.5s out there. That's a big favorite. Yet the over-under line is only 51.5. And that's one of those weird games now when you get such a high favorite and you get such a low over-under line, depending on the 2 teams involved, the conferences, and the weather conditions. This has been an outstanding over the total situation. Let me see if I can explain it like I did in my write-up for this particular game. And it's something called the unfamiliar blowout over scenario. Number one, with Texas favored by 40.5 and the over-under line 51.5, there's a good chance Texas goes over the total all by themselves in this game.
Yeah.
You know that. But based on the point spread and the over-under line, the perceived or the implied score in this game is Texas 46.0, UTEP 5.5.
Oh.
UTEP is projected to score less than a touchdown, only 5.5 points per game. Texas projected to score 46 points. What I like about this is the fact that, Texas has not looked great on offense as of yet this year. Acknowledged tough road game against Ohio State in week 1. Even last week, they struggled to score against San Jose State. I think they only scored 38 in that particular game. They're looking for a blowout. And yes, Texas can very well score 50 or more in this game and go over the total all by themselves. But let me talk about this unfamiliar blowout over situation. There's a couple of things that have to be in play enough in order for us to bet the over in these games. Number one, it's got to be a non-conference game. Check mark. Number 2, the favorite's got to be laying more than 31 points in the game. Any favorite of 31.5 or higher in a non-conference game. Okay, so that's check mark number 2. Number 3, the game total has got to be less than 58 points. We're at 51.5, so we can check off the box on that one. We've checked off 3 boxes in that situation thus far. Next up, weather related. It's got to be a relatively hot game. 85 degrees and higher, relatively hot game. Guess what? We're going to get that. The forecast is for 93 degrees in Austin. Hot game. Finally, the 5th part, the average wind speed, less than 10 miles an hour. We all know that when we get 10 miles an hour, maybe even 20 or higher, the unders are what we look at. In this particular game, the forecast is for 6.5 miles per hour or less in Austin. These games, non-conference game, favorites laying more than 31, over underline is 58 or less, hot weather, low winds, 64% over the total in these non-conference games, now over the last 20 years. So again, it's a weird situation. These games don't come up very often in college football. You may see 2 or 3 of them a season because naturally the non-conference schedule is the first month of the season. But this is one of those rare games in which everything applies, and we will be betting the over. Texas versus UTEP over 51.5. We explained some of the reasons why. Ideal scenario would be for UTEP to score a touchdown in the first quarter. That would be fantastic. But you know what? We may not even need minor points, and this game should still go over the total, Jim.
Excellent analysis. Awesome.
So that's one of our three totals that we got for tomorrow in college football. We've got 2 more as well. We're selling it as our total triple play. And again, we've started very, very good with the college totals. We'll see if we can continue that Saturday before we head back into Sunday's NFL action. And maybe we should talk about some of the games on Sunday, Jim, in which the over-under line has moved significantly. Like, for instance, down here in South Florida, the Patriots are playing the Dolphins. Our Dolphins hosting New England in a big-time game in which both teams lost and looked pretty bad on offense in week 1.
They did.
I'm not surprised. The over-under line has fallen 2 points in the game. Open 45.5. We're somewhere around 43 right now, maybe even 43.5. The line has dropped 2 points. And I'm not surprised in that particular game. Another game in which the over-under line has moved, particularly off the summertime line, is the Rams-Titans game. You know, we were on the Rams under last week when they hosted the Houston Texans in game 1. Final score 14-9. We did win that one. But the Rams are playing the Titans, and the summertime line in that game was right around 45. It's already down to about 41.5. So there is some steam coming in. The Rams have struggled on offense. Tennessee couldn't even punch it in the end zone in their first game of the season last week against Denver. So I'm not surprised as long as the line stays or you can get it at 41.5 or higher. I do think there's still some value on that game under the total, and I would agree with the steam. But again, that's a game that has kind of moved significantly from what the projected
4-point move. Yeah.
So from what the projected summertime line was going to be. The only other game that's moved sizably in terms of the total, not surprising, is the 49ers Saints game. Opened at 44, down to 40.5. Well, you know why that is. They just announced yesterday that injuries for the 49ers.
Yeah.
Kittle's on the IR now. Brock Purdy's looked like he's on the IR. He's going to be out a month as well. So it's going to be the Mac Jones show for San Francisco. You know, the Saints struggled with Spencer Rattler, quarterback, last week. So I'm not surprised, but still there's been a sizable line move toward the under in that one. We're at 40.5 to 41 right now, but it's come down about 3.5 points. Of course, the big move coming when they announced that Brock Purdy would not play for the 49ers. It's a little too low for me to be betting the under in that game now The value, of course, was on the under at the opening line, not the current adjusted line of 40.5. And one more thing, Jim, about before we get into some potential props for the weekend, is that I love these early season NFL Mondays in which they have two games. And the NFL has kind of learned their lesson. The last couple seasons, when they've had these dual Monday games, they'd have one game start about a half hour after the other. And to me, that makes no sense whatsoever. I want to watch both games. Guess what? The NFL has got the picture, and we got the Bucks Texans starting at 7 o'clock Eastern, and then we got the late game out of the West Coast, the Chargers and the Raiders in your city there of Las Vegas starting at 10 o'clock. So we're going to be able to see both games, and I'm really excited that we get a Monday night doubleheader. I'm just sitting down to handicap the totals, and we may have a totals play in one of those two particular games. But I do want to say it's a good job, NFL, in finally scheduling Monday night doubleheaders like they're supposed to be.
Absolutely. I do notice, and I know you were talking about the Sunday games. This Tampa Bay Houston game opened 46.5. It's down to 42.5. That's a 4-point drop.
But you're right on that. Absolutely true. Tampa did not look good in their first game last week without Liam Cohn as their offensive coordinator. Baker Mayfield did not look good at all last week. We lost that prop, that's for sure. Did Houston even score a touchdown? I don't think they did. They lost to the Rams, 14-9? So all of a sudden you wonder what you got in terms of Houston in regards to their offense. They already, after trading Tunsil, we talked about it last week, have one of the worst offensive lines in all of football. They got major injuries on the wide receiver. Joe Mixon, their number one running back, is out as well. So all of a sudden, a team that has won their division each of the last 2 years, you kind of wonder what they are on offense. Yeah, they got a defense, that is for sure, that will keep them in games. But all of a sudden, there are some question marks when it comes to Houston and their offensive capabilities. So again,
this sort of dovetails into our conversation about quarterbacks. Stroud came out, had that great rookie season. Then he regressed. Now he is still regressing. He's still at that regression level. Now, he doesn't have a great offensive line, and he has wide receiver issues. Last year, he had a lot of wide receiver issues. Tampa Bay, now, I have to give a little bit of an excuse to Tampa Bay because of their offensive line last week against Atlanta was really beat up, and they did have a wide receiver out as well. So, but they found a way to be efficient enough in that game to come back and win it, which is when you look at that game, you say, well, how the hell did they win that game? But, well, that's the way they play. They're tough. But this Houston team is a little bit more fragile than what we remember them 2 years ago. And, of course, they winning the division last year, but we have to look at the other teams in their division as being pretty poor. Mm-hmm. So, how good are they, period? I don't know.
Right.
And if the Colts and Danny Dimes can play like they did last week, I don't think they can, because they're not going to play the Dolphins defense every week. They might actually be the right team to win this division. But again, it all remains to be seen, and this is a 1 week effect. So if you look at the overall picture of these two teams, 46 down to 42, 46.5 to 42.5. Man, that's a big drop.
It's going to be a big litmus test game for both teams to determine what they are exactly. Again, you mentioned Tampa and the fact that this Tristan Wirfs offensive line injury is so significant to them, because now they've got 3 guys playing out of position on that offensive line to compensate for the Tristan Wirfs absence. So, right, you don't know what you got with Tampa until he comes back, until Chris Godwin is healthy. We don't know what we got. I'm sorry?
When is he scheduled to come back?
It's week 5, week 6.
Okay.
And Godwin maybe a week or two sooner. He's not on the IR. He's been practicing. So hopefully that'll open things up a little bit for Tampa Bay. Um, Credit to the kid from Ohio State, Ibuka, who's kind of
Oh, yeah.
picked up the slack while Godwin has been
He
gone.
he
He was
looked
one of the,
good.
he was one of the only wide receivers who looked good in Week 1 in the NFL. It was a
Right.
bad week for wide receivers in NFL, and this is regardless of whether you're a fantasy football guy, whether you're a DFS guy playing on DraftKings or FanDuel's, whether you're a prop guy betting prop bets. This is kind of a good segue, Jim. It'll take us into our next little area in
Okay.
which I'm about to talk about wide receiver props. But anyway, last week was a bad week for wide receivers in the NFL.
Do you
There were
think
not
CD
too
Lamb
many.
would like to catch a few more of those
Oh,
passes?
CD with your drops. Here we are about 12 days after the fact, and I'm still pissed out about that Cowboy game and those significant second half drops by CD Lamb. That is for sure. Only a handful of wide receivers last week had a decent game, and the Ohio State rookie Ibuka was definitely one of them.
He looked
But
good. He
but
did.
Jim, if I can, let me get into our next area. I got it written down here somewhere. Here we go. Is a couple of props that we are going to be looking at in the NFL, and we're going to actually talk about two guys from the same division, the AFC East division, who are both playing Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock Eastern games. We're going to talk about this New England Miami game, going to be played down here in South Florida at 1 o'clock. We're also going to talk about the Buffalo Bill New York Jet game at 1 o'clock. A game in which, from a side play standpoint, I love the Jets in the game. I think they got a shot to win the game outright against Buffalo. Buffalo, another big defensive injury they announced today. They had their problems last week. Baltimore was running up and down the field against Buffalo last week. You know, Baltimore averaged, as I mentioned, 8 yards of play on offense last week, and they had explosive plays on 32.7% of their plays. I'm not sold on this Buffalo defense. They may have won the game, but I think there's a great shot that the Jets defeat Buffalo outright. I played a little bit on the money line. I did play the Jets this week in our Wise Guy contest, in which we were fortunate to go 2-0 last week.
Nice. Good job.
So this is one of my favorite underdogs of the week is the Jets, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, Jim. Let's talk about the two player props that we're going to be playing in these two particular games. The one is a guy that I've loved all off season. I made sure I got plenty of his shares on my fantasy football team, and that is the guy who is the true alpha wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Who would you say if I asked you who's their alpha? Who's their number one?
I don't think I know.
A lot of people would say veteran Stephon Diggs, and that would be a very, very good answer. Not anymore. He's over the hill. He's still nursing a knee injury from the offseason. Kayshon Boutte is their true alpha wide receiver for the New England Patriots. The guy who was a stud at LSU, whose draft stock fell because of personal issues, gambling problems whatsoever. This guy really, really stepped up his game for New England in the offseason, and he proved it in week 1. He was the only offensive highlight for the Patriots last week in that 20-13 loss against the Raiders. So I love Kayshon Boutte, that is for sure. He caught 6 of his 8 targets for 103 yards in that 20-13 loss, and his over-under for the week is 36.5 yards. Dating back to last season, in 4 of his last 5 games, he's got 95 or more yards. He really stepped his play up in the last month of last season, and he continued last week in week 1, the loss against the Raiders. Kayshon Boutte's over-underline for receiving yards is 36.5. Guess what? He could get that at one play. So not only am I playing him over at 36.5, I'm going to play an alternate line of Kayshon Boutte over 50 yards. And at that price, we can get him at slight underdog prices. in this case plus 140.
Nah.
Keishon Butte to have 50 or more receiving yards. Remember, Diggs is still working his way back from the knee injury. So, and yet with that said, Diggs still has more over under in his prop this week yards than Keishon Butte. The general public is not sinking with this. Butte is the stud of this game. He's got a nice rapport with second-year quarterback Drake May as well. Again, as I mentioned, 95 or more yards in 4 of his last 5 games. And I know there wasn't a lot of draft equity invested in the LSU wideout, but he is a former 5-star recruit. And after leading the Patriots last week in receptions, targets, and air yards, he now heads into a very, very easy matchup against a miserable Dolphins secondary. I'm talking, you saw what the Colts did last week.
Miserable team. That's just horrible.
Play Keishon Butte over 36.5. I'm playing him over 50. You may even want to try him over 60 yards at plus 235.
You got to try it.
Keishon Butte.
What is then last question? You're just dovetailing me into another question. Diggs, what's his over and under?
He's at 44 in the game. His numbers are actually higher than Butte. So that tells me that the general public is not getting it.
How about betting him under?
Diggs?
Yes.
That I like this, Jim. That is a correlated. That's a correlated edge to the parlay that makes a lot of sense. So
I mean, this is what you think. I know how you think, and you did it last week.
I love
with the idea. I mean, if this other guy's going to take over, Butte's going to take over. Diggs could easily, and that would be a nice small bet parlay on that over and under.
Yep, absolutely. The second part is the Bills-Jets game, and you know who roared back to life last week for the Jets in that game against the Steelers. Garrett Wilson. I mean, the Ohio State product is the number 1 receiver for the Jets. After he got kind of kicked to the curb last year when they had Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson kind of got kicked to the curb a little bit for the Jets. He's working with his college quarterback, Justin Fields. So there's a nice symmetry there already. Both Fields and Wilson played at Ohio State. He signed his big extension now in the offseason. He delivered right out of the gate last week, did Garrett Wilson, catching 7 passes for 95 yards and a score against a very, very good Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And I like it. Like him to do it again this week. And he's facing a very burnable Bills defense. We just talked about it. I'm not sold on this Bills defense whatsoever. You know what Zay Flowers did to the Bills last week? Yes. The Baltimore number 1 receiver, 7 catches, 143 yards against the Bills last week. I'm not sure that the Bills will be able to throw anything different at Wilson. And the fact that the Jets are a touchdown underdog in the game means that they can't and they will not abandon the pass because they might be playing from behind in the game. So there's some decent cornerbacks for Buffalo, and they'll make Wilson work when they're on him. But I trust him to create a fantastic amount of separation in those matchups. Now, he opened at 59.5 receiving yards. Garrett Wilson did. When I checked this morning, it's already gone up 5 yards. He's at 64.5. It appears some of the sharps are in agreement with us in this particular game. So consider 64.5. Play the over for Wilson. And if you parlay these two guys together, you can get back about 4.5 to 1 odds.
Yeah.
That's not a bad little parlay. That's Keishon Butte over 50 yards and Garrett Wilson over 64.5 yards. That's a decent little parlay of 4.5 to 1 odds on 2 receivers who should rebound this week. 2 guys who were 2 of the only wide receivers who looked good last week. They have dynamic numbers behind them this week. So consider that. We call that a little AFC East wide receiver 2-player parlay. Butte over the total and Garrett Wilson over the total, Jim.
I like it. I like it a lot. Definitely.
Good. Finally, Jim, I think we should end up with our long shot TD parlay. Last week's parlay, not good. In fact, we never got out of the gate in that parlay. One of the one of the three guys we mentioned was Chris Rodriguez of Washington to score a touchdown in that opener against the New York Giants. And here we find out, Jim, just hours before the game, that Chris Rodriguez was a healthy scratch. He wasn't even hurt. Washington decided not to play him. You know who got all the run for Washington in their backfield last week? It was that 7th-round rookie who they think is going to be a sensation, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the kid that they drafted out of, I believe, New Mexico, who looked fantastic last week, rushed 10 times for 82 yards, and he's the guy who got the TD. So we were right about the Washington starting running back getting a TD. We didn't know that Chris Rodriguez would be a healthy scratch an hour before game time.
Interesting they did that. Interesting that they did that. Yes.
Yeah, because they I mean, and here's the part. You want to talk about a Washington snake bit team. Guess who they lost yesterday, potentially for the season? Austin Eckler. Achilles injury yesterday.
Yeah, that was bad. I saw that.
In last night's game, it looks like he could be done for the season. And all of a sudden, Washington goes from a plentiful running back room to a running back room that has, one or two guys in it now. Their number one and number two guys from last year are now potentially out for the year. That's Austin Eckler with the Achilles injury. And, of course, the fact that they traded Brian Robinson Jr. to the San Francisco 49ers a couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
so all of a sudden now, guess what, Washington? You got question marks in your backfield, and I think that they are regretting letting Brian Robinson go in that trade.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Now they're going to have to go out there and find. There's a lot of running backs on the market out there that are not on rosters, but it's hard to find good ones.
But anyway, in complete transparency, we never even got out of the gate. So that parlay last week was null and void.
Yeah.
When Chris Rodriguez was a healthy scratch. We're going to bring the odds down a little bit this week and finish up with another 3-team prop parlay, anytime touchdown. And in this particular case, I'm taking basically the alphas for every team. I'm not going to roll the dice with a Chris Rodriguez. We're going to take alpha wide receivers who are all at underdog prices of plus 140 or higher, and we're going to combine them together in a all three must-score TD parlay. Another thing is we're going to stretch this out over a 2-day period so that we are creating a little bit of value in our 3-player parlay.
Provide some entertainment.
Right. One of the players going Monday night, 2 of the players going in the Sunday late afternoon kickoffs. But here we are, 3 guys, studs on their team, all to score a touchdown, plus 140 or higher. It starts in the late afternoon game with the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. He didn't score last week in their victory against the Saints. Marvin Harrison, plus 150 to score a touchdown. Haven't seen odds like this as far as Harrison goes in a little while. Marvin Harrison to score against a very, very weak Carolina Panthers pass defense at plus 150. I love it. Next guy, and we're talking about in what some are calling the game of the week. It's the Super Bowl rematch. It's the Chiefs hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Chiefs, of course, got some Super Bowl revenge going for them in that game. They're still hurting in the wide receiver area.
Yeah.
I have not seen Travis Kelce as an underdog of plus 165 or higher to score a touchdown in a long time, Jim. We're on it. If Philadelphia has any sort of a weakness on defense, it's how they defend the tight end, particularly in the red zone. Travis Kelce, again, Patrick Mahomes, the amount of guys in his receiver room is dwindling for him to throw to. So Travis Kelce to score a touchdown at plus 165 odds, count me in. Finally, the Monday night game, we talked about Tampa, we talked about Houston, and I'm going to go with Tampa Bay's number 1 guy. You know, a lot of guys, we talked about Ekbuka, the Tampa Bay rookie receiver, the fact that he had 2 TDs in week 1, a lot of people are going to be betting him this week, right? Again, it's the knee-jerk reaction. The guy had a great opening week. He scored 2 touchdowns last week. Let's bet him to score again. Wrong. We play Tampa's true alpha wide receiver to score this week, Mike Evans. Again, at plus 140 odds. Normally, Mike Evans is somewhere around pick'em to score in any given game. On the road, indoors, a Baker rebound, if you will. Mike Evans to score at plus 140. If we combine all 3 guys together, Marvin Harrison to score, Travis Kelce to score, Mike Evans to score, this parlay pays 16 to 1 odds. And this week, Jim, we're going with the alpha wide receivers on 3 good NFL teams.
Well, I love it. I mean, you got everything going for you with that. Totally. I love it. I love it. 16 to 1 is not a bad price. I think it's a nice $100 bet. I like it. I like that.
Thank you, Jim. Do appreciate it. Don't forget now, Playbook newsletter, Totals Tip Sheet newsletter, available at playbooksports.com. I know that this is probably your 10th podcast of the week already, Jim. You do a lot of, my friend. When you see the other guys, the Mark Lawrences, the Andy Iscos, the Greg DePalmas, make sure you tell them I said hello.
I will do that. And I would like to say this, that Victor and Mark Lawrence have been together for a lot of years. They're both from Cleveland. I don't hold that against you.
Thank you, Jim.
I came back from Cleveland recently, but they both pick a lot of winners over the years. They know what they're doing. And even, especially, a lot of people fold and cringe and go in the corner after bad weeks. But all of us who've been around a long time, we all have our good weeks and our bad weeks. But the one thing about winners, they get knocked down 7 times, they get up 8. And that is the way we all are. And these guys produce winners over a lot. 6 decades probably. I would guess you're around 5 or 6 decades in this business. Would that be right?
I started officially handicapping around 1995, but I've been betting since about 1980.
Okay.
That's kind of weird, Jim.
That's 5 decades.
But do you know why? Because when I was a kid in my early 20s, Jim, I came across a television show on the USA Today TV network in the early 90s called Proline with guys like Jim Feist and Chip Chirimba and Dave Koken and the gang. And that's what grabbed me. So, Jim, I'm blaming you from way back in the early 80s.
Oh well, I appreciate that. All of a sudden I feel old. Well, unfortunately, Dave Koken has passed away.
Yes, he has.
I had Chipper on my Dom DeMarco's show, which is a show that we produce every Wednesday, and it's live on Proline TV on YouTube.
Great.
And you could watch it there. And if Victor was in Las Vegas, he'd be on the set too. And Mark, it goes for Mark Lawrence as well. But this is about picking winners. This show is going right up on Proline TV right now as soon as I end the recording and publish it. So everybody out there, you want some winners, follow the guys that have been around 50, 60 years that know how to beat the numbers. And there's not too many. There's a lot of handicappers out there. Everybody's a handicapper. You're a football fan, you're a Raider fan, a Jet fan, whatever you are. All of a sudden, you're handicapping. Not very many people can produce winners, and Mark and Victor does. So do I. And Chipper does. We had him on with another guy, Scott Pritchard, who had monster tickets last year. Big tickets. 184,000. Cashed on one time. My God, stuff. Well, we have a lot of great people. And we're bringing you the winners right here on Proline TV. Real winners, guys that know how to cash tickets and make money. So, Victor, this is a great show. I appreciate it. You're always well prepared, definitely well prepared. And I appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jim. You too. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Thank you. I got to figure out how to do this. Where the hell? There it is.